Hello, 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 and welcome to yet another episode of the Conversation Capital. I am with the voice of reason, as always. Ubonga bwetha, unjani sisi?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Besihambe ku maskandi soyasazi Zulu.
Dala ngisazi mina.
Kitsibile opapa.
Dala ngisazi. I even knew some of the songs. Wena newbie. So
Ntate Masilela, okay?
I'm good, and you?
I am awesome, thank you. So today we're chatting everything to do with the climate of sex work in Saudi. And I am sitting with the one, the only Sis Yonela Singu. Hi, how are you?
hi Ashler. Hi everyone in the room.
Awesome.
Hello.
So coming through from Sisonke National Movement,
That's
right?
correct.
And so I'm tempted to ask who you are, but I'm actually going to ask about the Sisonke National Movement. If you could just walk us through, what exactly does your organization do?
Sisonke National Movement is a movement for sex workers, and initially we had the tagline by sex workers, but not anymore. It has become very inclusive since its inception in 2003. It was started by a group of women who were in the sex work trade initially, and some of them had actually moved away to do other things. But the whole idea of starting the movement was that sex workers need a voice. They are people too. And sex workers are most violated in this country because sex work is criminalized. And there were allies who came through. There were other people who were very much passionate about human rights. And the movement grew to what it is right now. Currently, we have 6 offices across the country and 3 satellite offices in Mpumalanga, another one in Free State, another one in Northern Cape. So we service anyone who is in the sex work trade, but the biggest one is that we are advocating for the decriminalization of sex work. So that is holding our government accountable that in 2024, in a secular state, why are we still having people who are criminalized? Because sex work is a trade. It's people making money. Why are you criminalizing them?
What does that look like? What does your day-to-day look like at the office?
My day-to-day looks like I come in, greet everyone. We're a very small office, about 12 people in our Joburg office. Greet everyone, very friendly office, majority black women. And I have to go into the socials, check what is being said about sex work and what was said about sex workers. Check our mainstream media, what are they saying about sex work and sex workers. And then after, it's just fun and games. I mean, I take my work as my playground, basically.
If you could walk us through what is the current state of affairs with regards to sex work, because I see so many sex workers. Is the word prostitute offensive, by the way? Before we continue?
Very.
Is it okay?
That's why we stick to sex work.
Okay. I see so many sex workers as you drive through Hillbrow or wherever that I didn't realize that do they get arrested. Please just walk us through what's the current state of affairs.
Sex workers are targeted, I would call it, because policemen would still say that it's a criminal offense to be a sex worker, but the actual fact is that it's for you to engage in the trade that is criminalized. So if you are caught buying or selling sex to someone, so there has to be that exchange of money, which hasn't ever been, it has never happened in the country. No one has ever been caught in the act, because sex work happens in a very private space, usually in someone's home, usually in a hotel room that someone has booked. So it is it's very difficult to prove that this person is actually selling sex. So there's a lot of profiling that goes behind it, that if you look a certain manner, if you're dressed in a certain manner, then that automatically puts you in the sex work profile. So we've had instances of police officers bashing down doors, invading people's privacy. Because a typical example would be us sitting here right now, majority of us being women, and a police officer kicks down the door and then accuses us of engaging in sex work, yet there are no clients, no money is being exchanged. So it's the buying and selling of sex that is actually criminalized. But people misinterpret the law so much that they cross boundaries. And we've gone back and had, as a movement, we've gone and sensitized the police that it's not the person that is actually criminalized, it's the act. So if you are caught exchanging money with a certain individual, and the actual fact is that this person is buying sex from you, then it is then that you can arrest. So we have what we call the DDP, that is the Dignity, Diversity, Policing. Because we've also had instances where sex workers will come back to us and say, I went to police station X to open a case of rape and I was chased away because they actually learned that I am a sex worker. And we're like, that is a human rights violation because before before I engage in whatever it is that I'm doing, my work, I'm a human being. So if I go to a police station, I expect to be served. And we've heard instances of sex workers coming to us saying, look, I was taking ARVs, I have defaulted, I no longer take my ARVs because I go to clinic X. And the nurses, they are pointing at me, they're showing each other this, that, and the other. So I'm not being served as a human. I am being discriminated against. And those are cases that we take up with the particular individuals. We've had instances where we had to sue SAPS because sex workers were arrested. I remember this time it happened in Limpopo where we went and had 100 sex workers and we had other stakeholders, and we were launching the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And because some of the people stood up and identified themselves as sex workers in that room, when we left, there was a roadblock. And the 4 taxis which we had hired, which had our members in them, all of them were arrested. Because now they are sex workers. And that's when we had to sue SAPS, and our members walked away with a couple of rands, thousands of rands richer. And that is the state of this country. Like, you can't just have a roadblock because I'm wearing a certain T-shirt or because I am in a certain taxi with certain people who identified as sex workers, and then suddenly you arrest me. So those are the issues that we deal with.
Like you're reminding me of the conversations that were being had around the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter in America, where there were people who came out and said, but this guy is a criminal. How are you guys using him as the face of your movement and of your march? And it's this disgusting thing that we have as human beings where when we fundamentally disagree with someone, we come to a point of not even valuing their lives. Or the extent to which they are inconvenienced. And I remember for me, for a short period of time, it was a bit of a dilemma because I remember there were a lot of missionaries and people from different churches growing up. I was based in Sunnyside in Pretoria. So I grew up around that environment. It's not very far from that area. If you go to Acadia, sex work is very prominent around those areas. And there's a lot that I'll get to that a bit later. What I want to get to now is watching people from churches come and actually help these people. It really wired me differently because they viewed them as, these are human beings, dude. At the end of the day, they need to have sanitary towels. They need to have, and it took a while for me to grasp that at the end of the day, even if you're an individual who disagrees, and you see it a lot in xenophobic attacks, like you've gone to a point where you disagree with them, and I don't know for xenophobic attacks if I can just say it's just disagreement, but to a point where you've literally lost value for their life, right? And I think it's such an important place to start the conversation there. Like when you're saying you're arresting someone because they declared themselves as something, got on a taxi, but they're still not participating in the act, basically.
Very much.
But, there is a downside to this industry, right? So if we look at people being human trafficked into the space, people being forced into
that's
the
where
space.
I was actually thinking,
So maybe if you could just highlight, because I sometimes think that it's the lack of protection of the industry that actually creates gaps for those things. But maybe if you can, as an expert or somebody that's, working in this space day to day, because often when I see sex workers, that's my immediate assumption. Surely this person is forced. Surely this person has been dragged into I haven't been exposed to many people that I know willingly, find themselves in that position.
When we retrack our steps just a little bit, we end up in different industries or different trades for various reasons. Some people will say, I'm a hairdresser because I love touching hair. Some people will say, I love making clothes. I love creating things. So they end up, if they're lucky enough, there. But you get someone who's working at a bank. They don't want to work at a bank. They hate it with everything in their fiber. But the long and short of it is that someone has to provide for someone. And that someone includes themselves. So you find some women and some men and some transgender persons in the sex work trade, not because they're poor or they're uneducated or because of lack of opportunities, but it is something that they choose to do. It's entrepreneurship. It's someone choosing to be in a particular trade. Because if we look at it, I don't think there's someone who wants to sit and sell potatoes the whole day in the cold, in the rain, in the heat. But they do it because that's what pays the bills at that particular time. Yes, we do get people who get trafficked into trades. For instance, some people get trafficked into working in farms. People get trafficked to being domestic workers. And yes, people do get trafficked into the sex work trade as well. And and that is the reason behind people being trafficked into sex work. Sometimes it's because there is lack of agency to protect the individuals in the sex work trade. Therefore, criminals then find the soft spot that I can do my criminal activity here and no one is going to hold me accountable because already these people are dehumanized. No one cares about them. I mean, if a sex worker dies, it's not a thing of this is Yonela who is dead. It's a thing of it's another one. You know, she's another, and then all the other nasty words will be used to describe me. But people who are trafficked into sex work, we do our best to get them out when we do find it. It is a very dangerous world because we are dealing with hardcore drug dealers, you know, high-profile people, and it takes a lot to traffic someone. It takes a lot of money because you have to move this person from one place to the other without them being caught. So these people are highly resourced people who will actually get these girls, and they will lure them with things like, we'll get you in this famous party, you know, very elite space, and people want nice things, and they get promised things, and they end up as sex work slaves. But it is very difficult to prove that because these people are well hidden into places that we too cannot reach. Our resources don't allow, because these people are well funded, and you'll find there's a big correlation between drug traffickers and human traffickers, because people have to have someone doing something for them, and that is how some people end up being trafficked into sex work. And for the other women that claim to be trafficked into sex work, this is a very funny story, but it's not funny because when the police kick down doors and they find women sitting in that house or whatever, and then they start charging them for sex work, other women will say, no, Mr. Officer, I was trafficked. And that way they are pitied. They are treated with kitty gloves. And then shame poor soul, they put a blanket over them and it's all sorry, they carry them out of there and they're kept in a place of safety. Guaranteed, a week later, once those person goes home, they are now in the place of safety and whatever, because the person knows that, look, this is how I make my money. But I just didn't want to be arrested at that particular point, at that particular time. So I'm going to claim to be trafficked. And then because now there's paperwork that is done, it now increases the stats that so many women were trafficked. Can't you 190? No. That person is back there. If you go there 2 weeks later, you're going to find that person in a different spot.
But is that not because they get them hooked on drugs?
Some get hooked on drugs because, remember, some people don't enter the trade because they are willing to enter the trade, but it's a thing of you are dating person X and person X is involved in drug sale. And then the minute that person is then hooked on drugs, and then they're like, okay, you're not leaving because now you owe me X amount of money. So in order for you to pay my money, this is how you're going to pay my money. And that person we do not regard as a sex worker. That is not a sex worker. A sex worker is an adult who says, I want to do this. I am willing to do this. These are my terms and conditions of working. So those women that were there by condition or for whatever reason who find themselves there, those are not sex workers. And those are the people that we also very vocal about, that we will do our best to get these people out of there if we can, and if we do come across such, but they are not regarded as, we don't regard them as sex workers, because there's a very thin line between a person who is forced into something and coerced into something than someone who chooses to do it. And in sex work, you choose to do it. You know, you say, this is what I want for myself.
There are two things I really value about this conversation. One, you opened to say trafficking doesn't only happen in sex work.
Very much.
Two is the fact that some of these, the trafficking and all the exploitative practices happen because the industry is not protected. So it's a way these people find gaps, which can happen in any type of trade. Which speaks to the importance of, we used to hear this word a lot in varsity, sex work is work. So if an industry is not protected, there will be exploitative practices, just like your domestic work type of industry. And then there's another thing I wanted to speak about. Oh yes, I just remembered. There's when you speak about the fact that the sex workers are not taken seriously by our police officers. This also happened a lot. I just forgot his name. In the case of, I think it was Sifiso Mkwanazi. Yes, it is Sifiso Mkwanazi, where he was arrested for the murder of 6 sex workers. So what would you say about that? What does it speak to? They were found at the warehouse, ne?
Yeah, they were found at a panel beating shop, his father's panel beating shop. So, you know, this is where we come to say, how many more must die? Because Sifiso is not the first person to do it. And he repeatedly did it because he felt that I can do it because no one is going to go looking for these people. And no one has trace of where you are, what you're doing. So, you know, often I will liken sex work, the sex work trade, to e-hailing drivers, because you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what this person is going to do to you, but you hope and pray that it's just going to be a transaction. I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do and leave. But there are those unfortunate situations, and those 6 women were the unfortunate situations. And there were others who were almost victims of Sifiso, but they managed to get away.
Yes.
But it's so sad that because people don't talk to each other, because everyone is hiding, everything has happened underground. Those women couldn't easily go to the police and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we are experiencing, because they're not protected. Even the police have been violators of some of these women, especially street-based sex workers. They are more susceptible to violence, to abduction, to all sorts of social ills. You know, they are so dehumanized that we get instances where people say, I was standing on the street trying to make money and I got eggs thrown at me. A passing by car just started throwing eggs at me. People are willy-nilly taking pictures of people in the trade. So just to make laughing stock out of it, because those pictures are published somewhere and comments are being made, you know, memes are made.
So when I think about why there's so much hoo-ha around sex work, what do you base it from?
Yeah.
What do you think
you're
it
actually
comes
asking
from?
the next question, because I wanted to say, why do you think it's criminal? How did we get here? And maybe you're not the person, you know, because you're obviously on the side you think decriminalizes, but how do you think society got to a place where this is criminal?
It dates back to our history. Remember Group Areas Act, where you were not allowed to be in a interracial relationship. So our problem started there, because sex work was happening long before now. You know, it's just become common now because we're touting human rights. We like, this is a human rights violation. We are more vocal about what we're saying, and we live in a digital space where everything is there out in the open. We're speaking openly about things, and we're not fearful of being arrested, because pre-1994 this conversation couldn't happen. We couldn't sit here, the number of us, and actually openly talk about things. We would be arrested. So same as sex work, when they were actually doing their divide and rule, they're like, well, hang on, we said no interracial relations, but there are these group of women who are actually servicing these men. So how do we also make it a point that this does not happen? No person of a different color is going to cross the boundaries. And that's how sex work was criminalized. and it was criminalized under the Sexual Offences Act of this country. So and then it then became a thing of if you sell sex to anyone, then you are criminal. You are criminalized. So you couldn't keep a brothel. If you're a brothel keeper, you would be arrested together with the people that live in your brothel. And in 2007, when we actually vocalized that, look, everything is happening, but we have this divide that is still there. And they were like, actually, you know what? We made a mistake. We only said the sellers. The buyer too is criminalized. So if you buy sex, you are criminalized. If you sell sex, you are criminalized. So now we're going back to say, undo the injustices of pre-1994. Because you cannot say you are living in a democratic country when people cannot choose what they want to do. Because this is a violation. It deters people from freedom of association, freedom of participating freely in the economy. Because that money that they're making in the sex work trade, they don't fold it up and make it into little zols to smoke. They put it back into the economy. They reinvest it into the economy. So if you are saying now this is a criminal activity, you're actually deterring someone from choosing their trade, from actually practicing their bodily autonomy and choosing what they want to do with their bodies, because it's not harmful. We're talking about adults here.
Yep.
And I even went back to that thing of saying, you are deterring an adult from choosing what they want to do with their body, but you're allowing a minor to go and terminate a pregnancy. Remember the complications that come with terminating a pregnancy versus engaging in sexual interaction or companionship with a person in exchange for money, which is more dangerous.
And it is a tricky one, but I think about how in so many ways, many people are engaging in, I'm going to step on toes, but people are engaging in sex work and engaging.
Absolutely.
If you just look at the blessy culture,
Yeah.
that is engaging in, but like formalizing it and calling it what it is actually what's criminal.
Yeah.
Formally saying, give us 1,000
For.
That's what's criminal. Formally putting a number to it. It's almost like you have to finesse your way into getting what you need to get, or whichever way. And it's a difficult one because I think of the morality that's been attached to it. But as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about, the decriminalization of marijuana. And there were so many things. There were so many pros and cons. But at the end of the day, it boiled down to a morality argument. And the argument is that we don't share the same morals. Exactly. And you can't impose morals on people.
Absolutely.
No. These are the facts.
Absolutely.
Just because you wouldn't want to. I would, but you're in close proximity, Osionela. I would have loved to have a chat with a sex worker. I would love to have the conversation of, do you really want this for yourself? And as somebody that's worked very closely with them, if you could just shed light on, some people enjoy their job. Am I correct to say that?
Because we've touched on morality just a few seconds ago. Everyone now wants to be politically correct. Everyone wants to be morally correct. What does society want versus what you want versus what society wants? Society will always outweigh you. We'll get a lot of people will say, it's immoral. But how many single mothers do we have? Is it moral for you to have children out of wedlock and then leave them for someone else to raise? We've never posed that question to ourselves. But when it comes to sex work, we're very quick to jump into morals and ignore the constitution that actually governs us, which says, you know what, keep your morals to yourself, and then we will deal with the constitution right now. This is what the constitution says. And we're all going, it's immoral, to have multiple partners. But hey, I'm raising 3 children, 4 children, different fathers. What you talking about? And that guy has 5 different baby mamas. And he's getting married today, sonke senze step.
Or people that aren't raising their kids.
That's immoral. No, he is there. 5 baby mamas, but today, since this step, we're celebrating his wedlock. But 5 baby mamas, we're not talking about that morality. And now sex workers are so stigmatized and so marginalized to the point that if you were to ask them, do you enjoy what you're doing? They will think what society wants to hear. And they will say, no, I didn't choose this. I did this because I was poor. I did this because my mom. So we're trying to find that that thing where people are going to pity us. So we say, "I shame. I feel sorry for Uzandiwa Bantu. Shame her mom died. She ran away from home, and then she ended up in Joburg. Met beautiful Ashla. Ashla was very nice to her, and then Ashla said, "In order for you to live in my house, that is the stories that you will hear." Because that is what makes people feel, it eases the guilt or the shame, of actually saying, hey, but I just got tired of scrubbing someone's floor and I decided this is what I'm going to do. I'm making more money here. It's quicker. It's less rules. It's less boundaries. I make the rules. I make the boundaries. I'm not being told by someone to come in at 7 o'clock and knock off at 5 o'clock. I don't have to pick up no one's underwear. I'm doing my own thing. But when they're going to speak to you because they want to be morally correct, they're going to say, I don't like this work, but I have to eat. So I am not one gutsy person who will come there and say, whose morals are we talking about here? Person is paying their bills. They're not being a burden to society. They're not being a burden to the state. Because currently we have more grants being paid out by the state than actual income from salaries. So people are finding ways of making money for themselves. Podcast now is even overtaking mainstream media. We're getting more things. we're getting more things said and done through podcasters. And so does that mean now mainstream media we don't care about you? We do care, but we're getting more things done on ourselves. And podcasters are sitting there and like, that station is not going to employ me. I've got the skills, I've got the qualifications, I've got the know-how. Let me get my equipment and get working because I'm not going to wait for a salary from someone who's not willing to employ me because the job market is so saturated.
I think you're bringing about another very important question of, are you not asking yourself whether the reason why prostitution is flourishing so much or sex work is flourishing so much is because the government isn't providing accessible work for people? Because it does. I'm actually looking at a number of countries where prostitution is legalized. It's actually quite a lot. I can't even list all of them. And it's actually surprising. You would not think that some of these countries have it legalized. And I'm thinking now as you're speaking of the Geneva Conventions, that human beings understand the value of a human life to such an extent that if we are at war, we are fighting, the goal of a war is to kill each other. We have rules of what you can and can't do to that person in war. We're here to kill each other, but you have rules to protect people in that environment. It only makes sense that if you're going to value a life in an environment like that, that you would value someone's life in an environment where they quite genuinely have different circumstances that they're coming from, that they're trying to, I'm trying to get past this circumstance. I'm trying to send a kid through high school or whatever the reason may be. And I think maybe this is the point you're making, correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes it's not even a question when you're talking about we want the sympathetic story. Sometimes it's not even about whether someone has a sympathetic story or they're doing it for a noble cause, that it shouldn't take that for you to be able to say, this is a human being, guys. I get it. I don't agree with what they're doing, but guys, this is a human being.
And human rights still apply.
Exactly.
And often people, when we're talking about sex work or the sex work trade, often people think, there's 10 men lined up for you there to engage sexually in. Not true. Myth number 1, not true. You get sex workers who will say, no, I have my one client for the week and I'm done. And during the week I do other things. I'm involved in other things like I'm washing windows. I am there, a packer at that. We get people who are in the sex work trade who are doing their own weaves. They have beauty salons, but they say, I just do this either for companionship, or I do it for just to be out there, to meet other people, to be sort of like almost like a stock fair kind of situation, to be part of a society.
Do places fall under sex work? Places fall under, or that would be something different?
If we were not immoral beings as people in the sex work trade, they would all fall there. Strippers,
Okay.
your people who own sex shops, those adult stores, those are all in the sex work trade.
True.
But
I've never considered that. I've never
remember, this
considered
is
that.
adult content that we're dealing with here. So sex work is all about adults and adult entertainment and very and it became a niche market, so people wanted to de-associate themselves, because remember, sex work is always touted as a black, poor, uneducated woman who is engaging there, but you see it in mainstream media as well. When they're talking about sex work, they will bring that woman. You will ask yourself, darling, when last did you take a shower? Yes, she's street based according to them, but you'll find that this is an unhoused person who lives on the streets. So her hygiene, her access to hygiene is very limited. And that was the person that is going to be dubbed as a sex worker.
Yeah.
Sure.
That lady, over 5 rand, that is the woman that will be shown as a sex worker. But they will never come to a beautiful studio apartment like this and say, this is a sex worker's house, or this is a sex worker's place. They will never go to that one, because they want that it almost causes clickbait. Almost like, how many clicks are we getting? How many eyes are we having on this story? Because we're seeing this shame aram woman who, with a chipped nail polish. And we're like, darling, this is not even a sex worker. This is an unhoused woman.
Yeah, you're challenging even me, because to be honest, when I think of sex work, that's what I think of.
Yes.
That is the truth.
Yeah.
As you're saying it, I'm realizing, actually, there are layers to this. It's a whole industry, like you're saying.
It's a whole trade. You would find people in your complex that are actually in the sex work trade, and you wouldn't even know. Just driving.
Why are you saying yep so passionately as if you know the people in my complex?
Not your complex, but there's definitely
What do you know?
not this complex,
But
but there's
I'm
a
saying
lot of people.
Your neighbor could be
from
a sex worker.
estates, yeah, from
you wouldn't
estates.
know, because she's so well put together, and she
That's
won't tell
true.
you that
or after they are 5 to 9,
precisely
9 to 5.
9 to 5.
They-
They won't tell you
Yeah.
that. So we get different types of sex workers, and sometimes I even say, think of cars. How many cars do we see on the road? There are many cars, but people choose the kind of car because it's associated with a level of class. The same with the sex work trade. The sex work trade is very vast. It's very big, starting from the person who's selling their lingerie and owning an adult shop. It became a very niche, elitist market. But when it comes to sex work, particularly, which used to be prostitution, it's a thing of, it's black poor women, stay away from it. It's dirty. It's ugly. It's immoral. Keep it criminal. And then we can go and strip, and we can go and have people putting money on our beautiful bras and our beautiful panties. We can go iron our cellulite away and have the gentleman's club. And it's legal. It's legal, And if you look at the health department is big. You get engineers there. You get administrators there. You get finance people there. You get the same as the sex work trade. But then we're going to decide, because this particular part is held by a black woman, we're going to shut it down, because we need to control. We need to always control people's movement, control people's association, control people's economy. And we're going to make it look poor. We're going to dirty it. We're going to stereotype it, make the whole community hate them. And then we carry on with our lives and feel good.
And tell me,
definitely,
what does the decriminalization of sex work look like?
Is it true that they legalized sex work during the World Cup? I heard rumors of that. Oh, okay. You heard it, right?
I also heard that. Before we get to that last question, because that's more towards closing, you're challenging my reflections on what sex work and sex work industry looks like, especially when you were highlighting that some people will tell you the story you want to hear when you ask them, because it's softer for you to hear instead of me saying I give back look or ropa fancy, so I'd rather do this. You know what I mean? And I remember I met a dominatrix for the first time. I didn't even know what a dominatrix was recently. And when the girl was explaining how she got into it, she said that her parents in her cell, they design and sell sex toys. I immediately thought I dysfunctional household. I didn't say to her, but in my head I was like, hey, you know. And as you're saying this, I'm realizing here's somebody who their families decided not to subscribe to what my subscriptions of morality look like, and so you've done a lot of challenging. But yes, as to what Bonga's saying, what does it look like for it to be decriminalized? What does it look like for in a world where these people are not being shamed?
The first, in 2022, we had a bill drafted, and finally, our policymakers came to their senses and they announced that this is now going to go out for public comment in 2022. It was November. It was the 1st of December. It was World AIDS Day. We were very excited. We're like, finally, we're going to see less human rights violations, hopefully. It's going to be easier for people to live and be vocal about what they do. And that bill had only two asks: expunge previous records of people who were charged for sex work and fined. Because you remember, if you're sitting in a brothel or in a space, or you're standing on the streets, the police would come and arrest you. And when they get to the police station, they say, sign here and pay 500 rands, right? You don't know what you're signing. It hasn't been explained to you. You don't know why you're signing this, but you just want to go home. You're thinking of your kids that you left at home. You're like, okay, fine, I've got 500 rand. You open your bra, get your 500 rand, and you pay the 500 rand. And there, months later, you don't know. Lo and behold, you're sitting with a criminal record. And you're looking for a job now somewhere in mainstream or corporate or whatever. And then you are told you've got a criminal record. So we were saying, expunge all those criminal records. Of course, there are criminal activities that happen in sex work where drug dealers will come and be like, hold my drugs, I'll sit in the car, I'll keep you, I'll protect you. We get instances like that where sex workers trust criminals to keep them safe, because it's such a dangerous place to be in, because you're going somewhere with a man you don't know. So this person is going to keep you safe, but in return, your payment is hold my drugs. So we get instances like that. Then that is beyond our control. We're not going to promote criminal activity in the name of safety. We say, if you are caught with drugs, that's up to you, sister friend. Look after yourself. But we're saying, please expunge those records of people who were forcefully arrested and charged with nothing, but then only later on they find that they have those criminal records and they signed a blank document, because it happens. And also, we were just saying, expunge those criminal records, first of all. And second of all, allow the sale of sex between adults. If an adult says, I want to buy sex or I want to sell sex, allow it. That's all we asked. And then state law advisor came back and said, you know what? This is not regulated, so we cannot now put it out and say, yes, it can be law. We're going to go and repeal that criminal aspect of it all. And what pisses me off the most is that you are charged under the Sexual Offences Act. People who rape children or rape other people are charged under the Sexual Offences Act. So you are as dangerous as a pedophile. Now, what this means, if you are registered there, that means you cannot be a teacher. And we have students right now that are engaging in sex work. They might be lucky enough and not arrested, but now if they graduate and if somehow they were caught in the act, that woman or that man will not be able to apply for a job. Because remember, she was charged under the Sexual Offences Act. So you are no different to a rapist. You are no different to a pedophile. Your life stands still. You can't leave the country with such a criminal record. So what are you going to do? How are you going to earn your money then? If your life is being choked and put to the ground like that.
Grassroots.
So we're saying, please expunge those criminal records because you're holding people's lives. Peter, this woman, may her soul rest in peace, she died. She got a job at Robben Island to go and work on Robben Island. But when they did the background check on her, they found that she's got a criminal record. And it was under the Sexual Offences Act. Immediately, her contract was cancelled. And where did she go back? Back on the streets. Because she was like, oh, well, I tried.
That's counterintuitive.
I'm also thinking, we were talking about it this morning, Bonga. We were talking about the layers of our justice system. Yeah, I spoke a lot of, around petty crimes. I'm not saying it's a petty crime, but I'm just saying around petty crimes, there's not enough layers. That's why you find somebody that, did a bit of pickpocketing, won't go to prison because the judge is reasonable. Do you get what I'm saying? But then what's the other layer of punishment that we have? Sometimes these are the questions that we ask, but that's I guess a story for another day. And
because it also makes you wonder, we have correctional services to get people in the criminal justice back into
rehabilitated.
Then why would you do that to prostitutes? That seems like very heavy-handed.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because the point is to get you out of that, and if that's what you want to do,
this corporate has its own right to say no, we don't want people with criminal records.
Exactly.
But then what happens to them? What happens? There's even it was a program on TV that was just speaking of like. Getting criminals back into society, integrating criminals back into society.
That is so the best way to just fix a society. Just make sure that there's a way in which criminals can get back into working. Obviously, not every one of them will stay rehabilitated, but it's a risk worth taking because you can manage to, let me not say fix in as much as integrate the majority.
But even, don't you think, this is a difficult one, don't you have a right to know that the person I'm hiring to look after my daughter?
Oh no, definitely. That's different, because what she's saying is you are equating what they do to pedophilia. That's different than from putting them in their own set. Because if you put me in a separate category, then we all understand.
But also, this is the thing. Remember, if you do certain crimes, you can go and get a presidential pardon. After serving your time, and that can be removed from your name depending on the crime. But I know you can't get a presidential pardon for murder. That sticks with you. You can't get a presidential pardon for armed robbery. So criminal charges are grouped based on severity. And unfortunately, Sexual Offences Act falls right there where you cannot go and get a presidential pardon.
That
because
just
remember,
doesn't make sense.
You've raped someone. You have raped someone. We cannot
in the same category.
go back.
To put it in the same
but we are
category
put in that
doesn't
same
make
category
sense.
because Sexual Offences Act. Yeah, you're there. You're contravening the Sexual Offences Act by engaging in the sex work trade. You see, that is the magnitude of this whole criminalization issue that we are fighting. That this is a human rights violation because remember at some point we had a big fight with social development which was taking the children of sex workers. So here I am, I'm getting ready, going to work. I come knock at your door, Ashla, please look after my daughter. And then I'm gone. You don't know where I'm gone, but I just said look after my daughter. I'm gone. I'm arrested. It's a Friday. I'm only going to appear before a magistrate on Monday. Or I'm not even going to appear because no sex worker has ever appeared before a magistrate for being arrested for soliciting sex or whatever. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday afternoon, probably you are released without being charged. You've been in the police cells. No one knows where you are. And she was like, hey, this girl has been here. She doesn't have a jersey. It's getting cold. The child is hungry. She takes the child to social development and says, Liz abandoned her daughter. And then when I come back, I'm like, where's my child? I'm like, took her to the social workers. You know how difficult it was. And social development was so silly because they know for a fact they don't have the resources to keep those children there. But they're going to take those children in any case. Abandoned child. I'm like, really? This child has a house, this child has everything, but because the mother was just not there for a couple of hours, because of the police who decided to take her from wherever she was, trying to get money so that this child can have school clothes or food or whatever. And this child is now taken to a foster home. And the foster home that our own social development does not afford.
Can I ask you a difficult question?
Please.
You don't have to answer it. I'm thinking about, there's this interview that Gail, forgotten, Oprah's best friend, Gail Mang.
I just know it's Gail.
Yeah, Gail does an interview with R. Kelly. And R. Kelly almost like defends that, some older men like younger women. And he's almost justifying his behavior. And of course, that interview was quite chaotic. But when he says it, I watched it and I saw so much sincerity. And so when we speak of like your morality doesn't need to be mine, the argument, can that argument not be used for things like pedophilia? Somebody says,
no.
Where do we draw the line?
Where do we draw the line?
No. Yes, this is where I draw the line. I stand firm in this.
Adults.
An adult is an adult. And a child is a child. And we shouldn't let our past traumas bleed on children. I don't care who says what. A child is a child. And I don't want to see children in the streets saying, I am a sex worker. Because I'm like, darling, you're not a sex worker. You belong in school. Where are your parents? I don't have parents. We've got a social development. We've got a foster care system in this country. And we find it a lot of the times. These children will claim, I don't have parents. But there's someone collecting foster care money for that child. But that child is out there in the streets saying, I'm hustling. And we also need to understand there comes an age, 16, that age where our hormones are raging. We've all been 16. We've all thought we know it all. We've figured it out. We find those kids on the streets because the minute you say no, it's because you don't like me. And it becomes very unfortunate if you're a stepmom and you have to look after that child and clap that child back into lane. It's a thing, you don't like her because she's not yours.
Yes.
You're abusing the child. But where's the abuse when I'm telling you, Hori, I want you at home at 6 o'clock because I don't want you to engage in X, Y, and Z. And child goes, Angale, ayuhlala estradeni. And the next thing they say, you know, are encouraging children into the sex work trade. I strongly and I firmly say, today and every day, I do not want children in the sex work trade. We want children to grow up as children because that trauma that they will experience on the street will live on until they're adults. And we will have a messed up society if we're going to say, my morality is not your morality. When it comes to morality, it's about what I am doing as an adult and what you are doing as an adult. But harming children and saying that it's children, it's okay, they can go wild. Then that's where I turn to apply my morality and say no.
Yeah, I think
agree
also,
with what you're saying. Sorry, I agree with what you're saying in the sense that if I look at when I was in high school, things that I thought I knew. I actually had no idea. I think about it all the time, like the little teenagers in my life, my nieces. I'm like, you don't know nothing.
it's coming for you.
You know?
Yeah. Like I'm thinking now of your question, which is a very, very deep question, a very important one for us to have conversations around, right? Where do we draw the line? But I think if you look at legalized corporations, like they're doing business legally, you legalize something, and then once it's legalized, you regulate it, right? So Sasol is a very dangerous company. Many people will tell you, I've received cancer or whatever as a result of Sasol existing within my neighborhood. So then that organization is then regulated because the government understands that it has to have limits under which it can operate, right? So I think, and I don't know if this would kind of answer your question in a way, I think that's where that would fall under, because we do it with so many industries. In fact, there are companies to this day where you'll find, like, for example, alcohol, to make 340 mils of alcohol consumes a lot of water, right? So as a result, there's a lot of regulation as to where they can take water, because there are communities where there aren't as much regulation as countries like ours, where you'll find a company comes, settles there, a factory, and they completely wipe the water clean and that entire community has no water, right? So then you find ways to regulate so that the way it doesn't seep into things like kids are now in prostitution, which I think,
And it would be easier to navigate things like human trafficking
Very much
if
so.
it was a more protected industry. I get what you're
Yes,
saying, for the industry
yes.
to be more protected so that we can weed out things like human trafficking. Now it becomes blurred in this little gray area.
You know, there's a whole law on human trafficking, but people are not. We're a very lazy community. We're like, I'm just going to sit here and just put blame and throw blame and throw blame
and hope it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I hope I don't have to deal with it eventually. But the reality is, if you're going to say sex work is encouraging human trafficking, let's talk about illegal mining. Illegal mining. Some of the men that are involved in illegal mining were trafficked. There's people who were sitting and probably having a beer or a party or whatever, and they were forced into a taxi and thrown in Stilfontein and like, there, go mine my gold. And that's why now they work under the conditions that they work under because they know their lives are in danger. And sometimes people do things for the protection of their loved ones. Imagine they come there, they dangling your daughter's picture in front of you and they say, if you don't do it, that is human trafficking because you're trying to protect your little one. You're like, my child is not safe. And people end up doing things. With the sex work trade, yes, there are people who are trafficked. I'm not gonna dispute that. But it is not as prominent as one would even say that you cannot regulate this industry, you cannot decriminalize this industry because of human trafficking.
Sure. Thank you so
I
much.
didn't think this would be this interesting.
Yeah, this was really interesting, and we'd love to have you again. We'd also, anybody that's willing to share their experience as well, because I think the conversation isn't done. We're still definitely peeling layers. I've been challenged quite a bit through this episode, and I'm sure everybody was, just basic things of like how you look at sex workers as unclean, and is that real? Is that realistic? What does sex work actually look like? What can it look like? I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you would know something like that off the top of your head, but a place where sex work being decriminalized worked and it's still working.
New Zealand has just done it. It's still very early stages because they decriminalized in 2022. So 2021, it's, to undo decades of damage versus living it now in reality. So we wouldn't say, yes, it's working or no, it's not working because, you cannot teach someone a particular habit who is used to a certain thing now for all of their existence, you know. So it's going to take time to get used to, but they have claimed that they are seeing a difference in the well-being of sex workers because people are trying to access services now a lot more than they would have before. And Australia is another one. Parts of Australia has decriminalized, and they are saying the same, that people are more open now to accessing services than they would stay in their marginalized little corners. And we know of the red light district, it's been there and it's attracted a lot of tourism. But now they're saying, you know what, we are actually thinking of not legalizing but to completely decriminalized, because when you legalize, that means you can only operate from here under certain conditions. But we are doing decriminalization, that means you can operate anywhere, anyhow, but the regulations around it.
Like any industry.
So what we're saying is we don't want sex work to be legalized because the danger would be if they say, okay, we legalize it, but we can only happen in Gauteng. That means all the sex workers of this country will come and flock to Gauteng. And we have over 100,000 sex workers in this country.
Oh, yeah,
Sex workers are actually saviors of marriages, yes?
I get what you mean. I've heard a psychologist say men actually cheat to save marriages.
Men would actually make use of the services of a sex worker to save their marriage rather than, because remember, with a sex worker, I paid you for a blowjob. Right? You give me a blowjob, I give you your money. We part ways. You're not gonna call me 2 hours later and be like, oh, I miss you. Hey, I need chocolate. we did our business. It's you and your e-hailing driver. You request the ride. When you reach your destination, it's goodbye. You're not gonna go call your driver now and be like, hey, chum, I'm thinking I forgot I needed to go to the shops there to get whatever. No, that deal is done. And chances, what are the chances are if you request a ride, you will get the same driver again? I've requested rides and I've never seen the driver
I've never had the same
I've
driver.
never had the same driver more than once.
Except
Yeah, that's a different case. That's a special case.
There's someone in the room.
It's a very special case. So yeah, the same with sex work. Person comes there knowing, I've got X amount of money. I'm gonna give that X amount of money. I get the service and I leave. But with a girlfriend, hey, she will wait for you until midnight and be like, yeah, I know now he's with a wife. Yeah, and I'm like, hey, when I give in, you know, because I know you'll be with your wife. I just want to start trouble. And the next thing, what happens? Your marriage is gone. But a sex worker will never do that to you. The minute you close that door and you leave, she's even forgotten your name. Chances are you don't even know what her name is.
Sure, we do need to sign out. I think, we do need to leave. But if I could just, I know it's a silly question: is stripping criminalized?
No.
Uchiki tiger, or you can strip in peace.
It's legal, but you know how it got stripped. We know how it got legal. You had to be friends with the police. Remember Jackie Silewi? Remember Lily Jackson?
Yeah. He's got a king. That was thank you.
Go to Mandy Wayne's book and read up on that, and then we'll know. Mandy Wayne.
Okay.
You'll know. Mandy, you owe me. I mentioned your name, and now I'm selling your book.
Okay.
So Mandy wrote about that, the charges of that, and how, and now it's legal.
Interesting.
Kudos to them.
That is
Interesting.
so interesting.
I won't go into the details of that case. It's not my place. But we all know what happened that year.
Osianela, thank you so much for your time. We hope to hear from you again. And we just hope to be, continue seeing the work that you're doing and the progression of the movement thereof.
Thank you.
That was Osianela coming through from the Sisonke National Movement, decriminalizing
Sex work.
I nearly said the other word. That's not allowed. That was today's episode of The Conversation Capital. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.